Howdy folks, my name's Eric.
And I'm Cole.
And welcome back to the Colorado portion of our road trip to Texas.
Looks a lot like New Mexico here though, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so join us as we cross another beautiful state. Except this one's way too hilly for our trucks, but.
Yep.
I mean, you don't know that yet.
So yeah, we'll pick off like pretty much right out at the border, which is like 32 miles south of Cheyenne.
7.
Yeah, 7 miles. Yeah, it's really, really close.
Yeah, it'll be a quick shot.
Yeah, so that's where we're picking up, and then yeah.
You get to see us go through Denver. Busy, crazy place, but
You keep spoiling it.
I know. We'll cut that out.
So yeah, we're just gonna jump on the I-25 and head on down.
I see days my star in the darkness. This will last is what they'll tell my I believe. If the land goes free like a bird, was what it is, or was how it grow up to be. On and love, on and man, she's got me in a show for taller than mine. It's for the perseverance, stand the dawn girl. It's with evergrass, it's out in the rain. He'll rise so we're free, that promise was that the nobles had, I always vain. On and on and on, she's got me a show on taller man.
welcome to the end of day 7.
We are not keeping track anymore.
8.
I think we messed that up. Day 4.
Yeah.
So I don't know what day it is.
Yeah, it's right.
It's been weeks.
It actually has, but
So yeah, we just rolled through 2/3 of Colorado. We were originally planning on stopping in Colorado Springs, but the place we were trying to get into was like an RV only place, and they didn't
too highfalutin.
They didn't like our kind there, so we just traveled 32 miles down the road to Pueblo, and now we're just staying at a KOA
In the desert.
with all sorts of snakes and scorpions and stuff.
Much different scenery than the last place, but
yeah. There's a couple of hairy points in there. There would be no footage of it because Cole was in front of me. I got caught at a couple lights in town there, and with the steep grade coming down to a light and then having to switch over like pretty quickly on me, I could see the smoke coming off my brakes, and I was pretty worried about a brake fire at that point, and I was mentally preparing to grab the fire extinguisher from the box of my truck to put out a brake fire on the side of the road.
Mine are getting absolutely cooking going down those hills too, so
yeah,
I tried stopping and waiting for him at a couple lights, but I couldn't anymore. My brakes aren't great to begin with, so
yeah, I'm kicking myself for not putting an engine brake in, because that would have helped probably
big time.
But it was necessary to take that out for what I had to do the turbo. But anyways, that's neither here nor there.
It's the trade-off of it, right?
But we got here in one piece, more or less.
Yeah, so we're off to dinner.
Yeah. Our next stop, we're planning on heading all the way to Amarillo. So you'll see the end of this video. We'll cut off at the end of Colorado, and then I think the next one we're going to be kind of scooting through New Mexico, and or not New Mexico.
I don't know, maybe.
Through, it depends on which way we take.
Yeah, we haven't planned a route
We
yet.
have a bit of a decision to make. There's a pass. It's the
Raton Pass.
Raton Pass. It might be called, I don't remember the other town on the other side of it. It might be called the whatever Raton Pass, but
Yeah, Trinidad is in Colorado and
Yeah.
Raton is in New Mexico.
so the Trinidad Raton Pass. Raton. Huh?
Max, help us out.
Yeah. So we haven't decided if we're going to take that yet. I feel like after all the grades we've been doing, the truck should probably be able to handle it, but
And on that note, we haven't broken down since the beginning of Wyoming, so
yeah.
I think we've,
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
I think we've worked all the kinks out of the truck so far, so.
Wow, just keep knocking. Yeah. Yeah, we'll pick up tomorrow morning.
stopped in Lamar, Colorado. This should be our last stop in Colorado. Just had to stop for quick pee. So it's a run. Well, everyone, that's about the end of Colorado. So
Thanks for stopping by and watching our video. We'll be back in a few days or so.
yeah.
And you'll get to see us go through Oklahoma.
Yeah. Hello and welcome.
Is this an intro?
Intro.
For what?
Colorado.
Colorado intro.
Okay. Colorado intro, take 1.
Yeah. Unless you want to do that on the mountains and we just do our KOA stop here.
Hello, folks. Welcome to New Mexico.
My phone is out.
It's okay.
Is it?
Hello, folks. Welcome to New Mexico. I mean, Colorado. We're in the south now.
Take 3. This is basically New Mexico.
It's basically New Mexico at this point.
Yeah.
We made
I mean, if we just told you it was New Mexico and you were like, yeah, it looks like New Mexico, like you would just believe us.
You would have no way of knowing.
Yeah.